Creating art can be overwhelming with all the choices, the different paths you can take, the fear of rejection, fear that the work isn't good enough. You don't feel like you have the time to do what you really want. You feel like you need this camera, that computer, this software to make great art like your heroes. If I just read one more book, take one more course, listen to one more podcast, then I will be ready.
I just guess I'm not ready. And I said, that's going to be on your tombstone. Here lies so-and-so, he was never ready. Why is it that art you have to be ready for? In life, you didn't know you were going to get a flat tire. You didn't know you were going to go to work and be fired. Every day you're like this. You're not ready for anything life is throwing at you, but you become ready on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that we think art and life should not be the same?
I see a lot of creatives fill themselves with limiting beliefs, and one of the big ones that can be crippling is the labels we apply to ourselves. Robert Rodriguez, the guy you just saw in the podcast clip, is a filmmaker, the guy behind Spy Kids, From Dusk Till Dawn, Machete, Sin City, Desperado, and El Mariachi, which was his first film. He surely didn't have the money, the crew, the skills to pull off a full feature film. But he did have a few things, a few friends, a camera he could borrow, and most importantly, creativity. Creativity to solve any problem that would come his way. And that's all he needed. He made El Mariachi for $7,000 with basically no crew. To get the money to create this movie, he sold his body to medical testing until he had enough where he felt confident that he could make the movie. He was told after he already created the film that it was impossible to make a movie like this with that budget, but yet he managed. He didn't have the luxury that big blockbuster movies have to waste money, because he barely had any. This forced him to get creative about his solutions and be resourceful about his props, his writing, his shooting, and so on. These constraints are what made the movie possible. If he had been told before he made the movie that it would have been impossible, he might have believed it. Maybe you know this feeling. Somebody else might have told you that something wasn't possible. Or maybe you're telling yourself that. Or that you need permission from some grand jury to be an artist. You don't. That's a limiting belief you put on yourself. A label that you can't do because of whatever. In the podcast with Tim Ferriss, Rodriguez talks a bit about the labels you apply to yourself and how big of a role these labels play in how we act. So you can fill in the blank here. Are you a painter? What do painters do? They paint. Are you an athlete? What do? They take care of their body and their diet. You get the point. Try to label yourself as what you want to be. An artist. And what do artists do? They create art and they show it to the world. But then you might say, yes, I'm an artist, but I don't have the time or the money to make my art. I need these tools or this gear before I can make my art. And this is just excuses not to get started. Think about the story I just told you about Robert Rodriguez. He didn't have what he needed to create a movie. At least not what people told him he needed.
But when you leverage what you do have, it's all about leveraging what you do have. It's also a thing I call freedom of limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have? What can you create with what you already have? If you claim to be a creative person, then use your creativity to come up with ideas with what you already have. That's where real art begins to form. Not when everything aligns, nothing goes wrong, and you have everything you need. It comes from those imperfections. If Jimi Hendrix was following the norm of how to play a guitar, following the guidebook, he would never have found his iconic style. And the same goes for Rodriguez. He found this style because of the limitations. And he still produces his movies like that, because it works. So make time. Make something with what you already have. Or remember,
that's going to be on your tombstone. Here lies so-and-so, he was never ready.
Maybe it isn't the time or money you lack, but you feel insecure about your skills. You feel like you need to learn more, read an endless book list, take more courses, or go to school. And you might, but all that theory is gonna go right out the window as soon as you pick up the pen, the brush, or the camera. Sure, something will stick, and some of the basics are great to learn, don't get me wrong. But doing the craft and taking action will develop your skills infinitely more. And that's not to say don't consume any books or learn any theory. I think it's great to learn, and I read a ton too, but I also catch myself in using learning as a way of procrastination. Because I feel productive, I tell myself, well, I'm clearly doing something, I'm learning, but there has to be a balance. And I think it's better to go into the making part a little bit more unprepared than you're comfortable with, and then go back to learning after you have made something. Then you will also have specific examples and situations in your head that will give you those aha moments while you're learning. And from my experience, the theory will be remembered much better when you have practical use cases for it. You can't wait to be completely confident in your abilities before you make something. The confidence doesn't come from a course or a book. You need to prove yourself in the real world. As creatives, we are sort of cursed with overthinking and a brain that constantly comes up with ideas And that can be both positive and negative, because we don't just come up with ideas, we also come up with problems. And this is where the limitations and constraints part is important, if your brain works like this. Overthinking approaches or paths to take will leave you stuck. When everything is possible, you'll get hit with analysis paralysis. There's simply too much freedom, way too many options to choose from. As Tim Ferriss says in the podcast, the canvas is too wide. Another common problem I see for myself is the endless refinements I can make when I'm working on a project. There are always things you can do and change or adjust, and there will continue to be. Sometimes it's just about saying stop and then move on. The fear I have, and I might suspect that you might have it as well, is some of these thoughts like, will this be good enough? Will people see the mistakes? Will it be a failed project? But as I said, it is within these small human imperfections that art and style comes from. We need to fail and keep failing. That's the way to learn and improve.
But if I go sift through it, the ashes of that failure, I find I got the idea for Spy Kids from that, because I saw Antonio and his Asian wife look like a cool international spy couple because they're dressed in tuxedos. And I thought, what do these two kids have to say? There's 5 of those movies now. 2 of my biggest movies came directly from a movie that you would consider a failure.
So make your art. Ship it. Fail or succeed, it doesn't matter. Repeat the process. Robert Rodriguez has said that he wants to create a body of work. Some of that work will fail, some of it will do okay, and some of it will succeed. But that only comes from this continuous practice of making and stumbling as you do.
But sometimes the only way across the river is to slip on the first 2 rocks. It's the only way to get there. And if you don't do it, you don't get there.
There's nothing wrong about having fear about what you're doing, fear of showing your work to the public, fear of not knowing how to do or solve something before you begin. I think Rodriguez says it perfectly in the podcast.
You should have fear. You should have some fear going into something.
Yeah.
I call it fear forward.
Fear forward.
Yeah, fear forward.
Yeah.
Like have
that.
the fear, but don't let it cripple you. Just go forward knowing you're doing something that's outside of your comfort zone and you're going to reap great benefits.
The fear is okay, but fear forward. Meet the fear, embrace it. Like Steven Pressfield says, when you feel this fear, you know you are really onto something. Change the idea from it's a negative thing, that you don't know enough, that you don't know the rules, into a positive. When you don't know the extent of what's possible, you will make it up as you go. The author Neil Gaiman talks about this in his famous speech.
People who know what they're doing know the rules, and they know what is possible and what is impossible. You do not, and you should not. The rules on what is possible and impossible in the arts were made by people who had not tested the bounds of the possible by going beyond them. And you can. If you don't know it's impossible, it's easier to do.
Rodriguez says almost the same, but in a different way.
Knowing's half the battle. What's the other half? Not knowing. I think that's more important because that's where the magic is. You don't know what the other half
Not
is.
knowing is half the battle.
Not knowing is the major part of the battle.
The most important lesson in this video is to take action. Don't just wait around for inspiration. Don't come up with excuses that you don't have what it takes, that you need more time or money. Figure out what you can create with what you have. Make something, move on, and make more.
Creative spirit, in my theory, doesn't have hands. It's waiting for you to get off your ass and pick up the pen, and then it can help take over. Always take action. That's why I say always take action. Don't wait to be inspired. Action first, inspiration second.